This is the Radio Check Podcast, life in the concert touring industry.
Wow, that's exciting. Hey man, how's it going? How'd you like the new intro there?
I really like the new music. It kind of sounds like we've grown up a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah. Our friend Dan Cleary contributed our music. You know, I mean, the old intro, which, you know, I really like what you did there, but it was just a little too.
I know.
This is, you know, Chris Kansy does this and he knows these people. And my God, this guy's incredible. You know, so, you know, it's a little too much for me. But I really appreciate it and everything you say and whatnot. But I like the new music. It kind of, you know, it's the next logical step in our you know.
Yeah, well, there's always growing pains, and you do something, and then you kind of go, "Gosh, I can't believe I did that, or said that, or did it that way." But it's always progression and doing new things. And I'm just gonna you gave him credit, but I'm gonna give him a shout out as well. Dan Cleary, thank you for the music. It's the new intro, and I've got an outro now, and it was fun to work with, and it's very cool. And so yeah, it's exciting. You know, we're kind of maturing a little bit and coming right along, and who knows what that'll lead to. But anyway, so how have you been, man? It's been 2 weeks or so since I've seen you.
Yeah, it's good. You know, life is really starting to open up. You know, it's beautiful outside. They're playing baseball now. I know you're not a baseball guy, but I almost
pinged you last week or the other day when I know it was opening day.
Yeah. So, you know, beautiful weather. We've got a smidgen of work coming up, so that makes me feel kind of whole again. So yeah, how about you?
Yeah, good. You know, as you know, I'm going down to Florida next week to see Mom for her 85th. So That's going to be exciting. See brother Chris and some little bit of family stuff, but work's chugging right along. The spring's great. Yeah, just excited for the nicer weather. Happy for you. You get a little bit of work coming along, and all is good. All is good. So. All right, now that we got the niceties out of the way, and so let's dive into this. I think this is going to be a fun one. I can just tell because of the pregame banter that we had going on here. But anyway, you know, I'm surprised I haven't met him in the past, but I'm looking forward to getting to know him. But who do we got, man?
Well, today is, you know, I'd like to call this person a really good friend, but since we've ignored each other for the last 10 years, I really can't say that. But, you know, somebody who I really love the shit out of and enjoy working with, dining with, hanging out with, and going to baseball games with. And you know what? He's pretty good at what he does for a living as well. He's another world-class sound engineer out there in the world. Coming from Phoenix, Arizona, Mr. Robert Scovill. How are you, man?
CK, I am so good, man. I am so good. I got to just tell you, I got to start by just saying, I'm so glad I was here to witness the CK production approval process. I've missed that so much. You know, somebody trying to get CK's approval on something that's happening in production here. That was fantastic to be able to see that again.
Oh, how fun. So how are you? How's life? You know, what do you surviving the apocalypse?
Yeah, I don't want to sound like one of those guys, but you know, you either see things as obstacles or you see them as opportunities, you know, so I've been one of those guys that's kind of looked at the industry and said, "Hey, this is a great opportunity if you make it so. So let's go make it so."
Yeah, I so agree. You know, just be creative, do things that maybe you've not done before. You know,
that's right.
Lots of, you know. I mean, I told myself at the beginning of this that, you know what, this is the year I'm going to learn Vectorworks.
Go get him, Tiger.
I don't know Vectorworks.
And is there more money in the future for you if you do this? I'm just curious.
No, there's not. You know, I just, you know, all the young guns, the young production managers, they know Vectorworks. So they do a lot of their own things. But, you know, not that I want to go on a Vectorworks tangent, but in my mind, Vectorworks is it's an application that applies to certain areas like rigging. I'm not a
course.
rigger. Even if I knew Vectorworks, I'm not going to be doing rigging overlays. I mean, there's a reason for Vectorworks, and they're kind of cool for on sales and that kind of thing. But that's what the promoter's for.
But I mean, you kind of hit at the heart of something there, Chris. I mean, especially a man in your position in a production, you have to know all the different languages, right? I mean, you've got to be able to speak fluently about a lot of different areas, right? At least a cursory level to be able to manage a production.
Yeah. Yeah. I you know what? I either know it or I fake it pretty good. One or the other.
I knew that. I wasn't going to say it, but I remember that well.
Hey, so leading up to this podcast, like I try to be kind of professional and do a little research. I mean, obviously, the things I know about you are first and foremost. But you're an educator. You're a lecturer. You do master classes. You've been have you filled a lot of your time during the pandemic doing that?
Well, yeah. I mean, it kind of made sense to do it on one level, and really, it's kind of driving that concept of opportunity again, right? Just to kind of reframe this conversation a little bit, maybe, from pretty early on when the lockdown happened, I remember thinking, okay, this is actually going to be kind of cool because our industry, and I'm going to talk audio here for a second, our industry is going to get to take a pause. Right? Because it has been zooming forward like a freight train out of control in terms of technology and the skills required to operate that technology. I mean, It's just been going blazing, like faster than it's ever gone in the history of that part of the industry. Right. And I just remember thinking, oh man, this is going to be so good. Everybody's going to be able to take a pause, and we're going to have guys actually be able to take some time and get up to speed on networked audio, on all of these other disciplines that everybody's just kind of been learning on the job. And man, that's a problem for us in audio for sure. And if you tag on streaming to that, I remember thinking, okay, here we go. Now this industry is going to get really up to speed. The infrastructure for streaming is going to get put in place because it has to. Mm-hmm. And now that's going to be a part of our world going forward. It's not going to leave us. It's going to be part of everything we do in live event from now on, Right. So all of that is kind of made, from my end of it, I also work for a manufacturer full time as well as doing shows and touring and stuff. And that afforded me the opportunity to do some podcasting and some webinars. I do this regular thing. I do about 2 weeks a month now called The Lab. And we pick a topic and we get in, I go into the surround studio that's down the hall here, and we get in there and do some real deep dives on audio topics for people. And then I post them up. People watch the replays, et cetera. So,
wow.
So there's a lot of teaching and sharing and interaction that's going on, but it's really good for our industry. I'm our side of the industry. It's very necessary right now.
Everybody's catching up, huh?
Yeah. Well, they have the time to catch up now. That's the cool thing,
Right.
If you take it as an opportunity.
Do you enjoy that? I mean, do you enjoy the lecturing and the, because it's not just getting online and talking. There's a lot of preparation involved, and
Well, I think you probably know me well enough to know this, but I'm one of these people that I loathe a charlatan. I just loathe people that are charlatans. And what teaching forces you to do, if you can do it with integrity, is you go learn the shit out of it before you talk to somebody about it.
Right.
So I'm the one growing as much as the audience, it's like, you have to do the research, you have to dig in and hopefully know what you're talking about, and be able to back it up. So,
I'm doing one myself, a master class where but I'm recording it. So I have this light set up and a camera, and I write out my lines and everything, and I have to just talk to nobody into a camera.
Yeah, that's actually hard. It's
really hard. Yeah, because last year I did one live, kind of a Zoom class for a production school, and that was so easy because the kids ask questions, and and it's just off the hip, and it's fun. This is. I don't want to say it's a task, but it's a lot harder. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Well, I know doing very technical topics, I mean, you kind of, I mean, for lack of a better word, you, and I don't mean this in the Matt Gaetz way, you expose yourself. You know, you are, you know, you are exposed to your audience, and you have to be ready to answer questions, you know, and you got to have, you know, enough chutzpah to say, if a question comes that you don't know, you got to be able to say, hey, I don't know, but I'll go find out. Hang on. Or, you know, I'll get back to you on it. I'll dig and find out the answer on that.
Right.
You know, as opposed to just faking your way through it. You just can't fake your way through it in those situations. You know, people are too, you know, they're just too susceptible to being manipulated that way. You just gotta do it with integrity. You just gotta.
You know what's going to be interesting? Everybody's going to, when we get back to work, everybody's going to have fresh ears. You know, I mean, all the monitor guys are going to do really well for a few weeks.
It's so funny you're saying this. I remember having this exact thought about 2 or 3 weeks ago, just thinking, man, I know what my ears were like after taking a 2-week break from tour. You know, where you come back out to the tour, you turn on the console and the band starts playing and you go, geez, is that where we left off? You know? Well, now, you know, everybody's got a year away from that. So, yeah, fresh ears, fresh perspective. Everything is going to be fresh. There's going to be some awkward moments as we start to come back.
Oh, funny. Well, you know how you've listened to some of these podcasts, so you know how I like to do things. I think the listeners are interested in people's lives and their careers and how they got started and where they came from and how they got, you know. You're from St. Louis, right? Or was it Kansas City? Was it St. Louis?
Well, I was born in Kansas City and then moved to St. Louis when I was about, I don't know, 7, 8 years old.
Oh, okay.
And did all my formative years there, and then came back to Kansas City to go to college and kind of got my audio career started there. So
Gotcha. You worked for a local company there, did you not?
I did.
Kansas
Yeah.
City?
I worked as kind of I guess you call it an intern. I don't know what it was, but I worked there for a good chunk of time. It was a big regional powerhouse through that part of the country, and they did shows, a ton of really great shows, a lot of really great work. And I didn't gather it at the time, but I was around some really exceptional audio people there. I mean, legendary audio people. I didn't know it at the time. I was too young to get it. But in hindsight, I just think, oh my gosh, I was walking around in a fields of gold there, you know, just absorbing every inch of it. So yeah, that was a big deal. And I caught a really lucky break in that there was a band from Kansas City called Shooting Star,
right?
That was breaking really big right as I got into it there, and I was able to hook up with them and was out touring when I was 20, you know, I mean, so
right.
Opening for everybody.
I'm trying to, over our many dinners over the years, you've told me the story of this, this is just a big recap.
It just depends on whether I tell you in the early part of the drinking or the later part of the drinking. That depends on how good the story is recalled. Right?
There you go. But were you a monitor guy first? Does he start mixing monitors?
Wait, you get your hands in everything, you know, I mean, at that point you're taking anything you can get your hands on where you're behind a console. So I didn't turn down any gigs, but yeah, some of the early gigs I did were monitor engineering gigs. Yeah.
Gotcha. Little return there.
You know what I learned about monitor engineering? Don't do it. Don't ever do it. Friends don't let friends mix monitors. That's just how it works.
Boy, you know, it is, you know, you're just that guy who turns into a target on stage left.
It is so true.
Great. So I know you and I've, you know, talked about in the past, just because I don't know where you went from Shooting Star, but I do remember some Go-Go stories. Did you?
Oh, yeah.
You were front house guy for the Go-Go's during their heyday, weren't you?
No, I was their monitor guy. I did
monitor
monitors
guy.
for 'em.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's
which is even. I mean, we got to be careful where we go in 2021 when we talk about these things. But doing monitors for 5 women, yeah, that'll challenge you.
Yeah. A lot of their debauchery is coming to light now because of the HBO thing and Kathy Valentine's book. Where I listened to Kathy on a podcast recently, and she's great. She's fantastic.
Oh, she is so much fun.
Recalling her stories, but you know, that was debaucherous, wasn't it?
Oh man, let me tell you, those girls, they could go. I didn't call them the Go-Go's for nothing. I mean, one of my funniest memories of that time and that piece of them was at one point we had In Excess opening up for us. And I remember thinking, wow, okay, this is going to be pretty cool. This great band, and the Aussies show up, and they're like big peacocks. I mean, they're just strutting around thinking they are they're going to rule the roost, and they are partiers. I mean, they are Australian level partiers, and these girls buried them. I mean, buried them. They thought they were coming to party. The girls showed them they were not there to party. They were there to recover.
Oh, how funny.
Oh, man. I just remember watching that just thinking, oh, go ahead, little In Excess guys. Yeah, just show us what you got there. And then, the next part of that, I mean, I hope we're not talking too far out of school here. I think Kathy's probably going to reveal all of this.
Yeah. Well,
we went down to, in my time with them, we did Rock in Rio. And, we went, down there. I don't know did you do any of the early Rock in Rios? I think this was Rock in Rio number 2, whatever.
This was early 90s. I did it.
Yeah. Oh, well, no, we did. This was early 80s. This was probably
okay. All right,
82,
so no,
83.
I was well after that then.
Yeah. We were on 2, like when we went down there at that point, you were down for 2 weeks and you played 2 performances in those 2 weeks. And there was a slotted day for you. And luckily we were on the Queen days. We played on the same days that Queen played down there at that time, which was just unbelievable. Those are still some of my greatest concert memories today, was Queen in Latin America in the early 80s. Oh my gosh. It was unbelievable. But, that was when, in Brazil, certain illicit substances were everywhere. I mean, there was just no getting out of it. And the amount of participation in those illicit substances was just unbelievable. It was, I don't know how you would even categorize it. It was so far off the chain. And, the amazing part of it was like, and I don't know if they continued to do this over time, but I remember getting there and just thinking, oh, this is a really, really bad idea. They had all the road crews for all of these bands, all staying in the same hotel.
Right. So, drinking the bar dry. Yeah.
I didn't sleep for 3 weeks. I mean, why sleep? No point in sleeping. There's a cab driver downstairs that's got the stuff that's going to keep you awake. So no point in sleeping. I mean, let's just go hang out at the bar. I remember our good friend Davey Bryson was down there with Rod Stewart at the time, and every night in the bar, he was completely holding court. It was a marvelous thing to see. It was incredible.
Wow.
The William Wallace of monitor engineers,
All right. So I don't know the chronology of your career, but, you're Shooting Star, Go-Go's, some of the early days, but you eventually ended up mixing the biggest band in the world at that point, with Def Leppard. They were
in the
biggest
80s
band in the world during the pyromania hysteria era. Yeah. They just were. I mean, I was in the industry not doing, I worked for, Joan Jett and the Blackhearts and smaller things, but we were just all in awe of how big they were, doing in the round, just fucking selling.
Here's a funny insight to that, Chris, that most people have either don't know or have forgotten about. Okay. They worked forever on that record, after Pyromania, working on Hysteria. Matter of fact, I remember, this will put some context on how long they worked on that record. I remember Joe Elliott being in the studio one day and saying, fellas, you know how long we've been working on this record? We've been working on this record longer than Cream's entire career. Can we just wrap it up? I mean, let's wrap it up and get it out there, see how we do.
Oh, how funny. Yeah.
But, the record comes out and, first singles were released in England and Europe. Does pretty good. Single release in the United States does okay. We have this huge tour booked. I mean, we are, how management works. Oh, we're booked for 18 months,
That was Q Prime at the time, right?
Q Prime, yeah. And so tour starts and it's not selling so well. It's just not doing good. Single didn't do all that great. First couple singles didn't do all that great. Did okay, but didn't do that great. Here's some context for it. Within the first I'm going to say, let me just do the math here. Within the first 6 months of that tour, we had gone and booked into all the places that we would normally play, all arenas, obviously, not selling out. I remember us playing the Omni there, and probably sold about at the time it was a big place. It's probably sold about a third of the house. And that was when everybody started kind of going, okay, hang on a minute here. This may not go. We may shut this down early, right? So our last show of the tour was in Colorado at, was it McNichols? Is that what it used to be called?
McNichols. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it was our only double nighter of the entire tour. We did 2 nights there. So Q Prime, in their wisdom, said, let's film it. Okay, great. So we filmed that, and we get handed our platinum records, and we go home. Tour's done. An abject failure, without a doubt. All the video that comes from that goes to MTV. Pour Some Sugar on Me, Armageddon It, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, we've booked another 12 to 14 months. I mean, it just exploded. Absolutely exploded. And it was all these frantic calls of, no, hold the gear, don't unload anything. I mean, it was just kind of an absolute panic. We're going back out, and we were out for another 14 months after that.
Right.
We came back to Atlanta probably another 5-6 months later, 3 complete sold out nights.
From a third selling. I mean, from a third of the
third
arena,
of the house to 3 nights in a span of about 6 to 8 months, all because of MTV. Period. End of story. If MTV doesn't happen, the tour's done.
So let's go back to that tour. So that's in the round, right?
It was in the round, yeah.
And so you've got an Electrotech system.
Yeah, we were using LabQ. Funny story behind that tour. I'll tell you kind of a cool story here, Chris. This is not too many people know this story.
You just looked around.
Yeah, I just kind of checking to make sure nobody's going to say, no, don't tell that. So in 85, I guess 86, I was mixing Alice Cooper's first comeback tour, right? And I was a huge Alice Cooper fan.
That was when he did that song Poison, right?
It was the one previous to that. I did the Poison tour, but I did
Gotcha.
the one previous to that, which I think was Nightmare Returns, something like that. I mean, it was a huge thrill for me because I'd been an Alice fan for my entire life. So to get to mix
Bob Ezrin,
huge thrill. No, that was Michael Wagner produced that record, and then Desmond Child produced Poison, I believe.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, I do the tour, and on that tour, opening act is Tesla. Q Prime. Right?
Yeah.
You seeing where I'm going?
Mm-hmm.
So Tesla's out. Peter and Cliff are out all the time. They hear me mix probably 70% of the nights. Somehow, I swear to you as I sit here, if I had a Bible, I'd swear on it here. Somehow, Joe Elliott gets a hold of one of my desk tapes from the tour. Now, I have no idea how this happened. I have a sneaking suspicion I know, but I don't know it for sure. Def Leppard's getting ready to gear up. And Alice tour is getting ready to wind down. The other tour that's getting ready to go out that's a Q Prime act is Dokken. I wanted to mix Dokken. Man, I want to mix Dokken. Let's go. I want some George Lynch. I want all those guys. I want to do that. Peter, I want to mix Dokken. Cold response, kind of a cold shoulder. I just thought, oh, okay. Anyway, Joe calls Peter and goes, I don't know who mixed this tape. That's our guy. We've got to have that guy. Do you know who it is? And Peter's kind of going, because he's been hearing it, he's kind of going, are you sure that's the guy? I've been hearing it out here. I'm not so, no, that's the guy. We got to have that guy. So I'm home. Phone rings. Caller ID. Q Prime. This is awesome. I got the Dokken gig. Hey, Bob, would you be interested in doing Def Leppard? I've been talking to Joe, he's really, marveling at whatever you can do. They want you, And I swear to you, my immediate response was, oh, Def Leppard, really? Man, I want to do Dokken. So, long story short, we make the connection, and Peter had asked a handful of other engineers if they wanted to do it, and he already had this in the round concept kind of vetted a little bit with what he's doing. And he was asking audio engineers, hey, can we actually do this? Can we pull this off? And I guess to a man, every other engineer that he spoke to said, I don't know, man. I don't think that's going to work. And I was the only guy that said, yeah, we'll make that work. Just got to hang the speakers in a circle. Let's go.
Well, today and in around the show, there's 6 months of sound design and heat maps and all these ways to do it properly.
Right.
Did you just...
Oh, we were totally flying by the seat of our pants.
Just chucked the boxes up in the air and pointed them at the seats and just made sure that it was 360 degrees.
Yeah, and honestly, part of the reason that we ended up with Electrotech on that tour was because of the weight of the cabinets. It was really the only PA that we could hang and get in that kind of configuration that would handle heavy metal, and was light enough to do it. So that was actually part of the design factor that we ended up with there that actually worked. Yeah. So that part was cool. But yeah, I'll tell you another funny little story. I hope Peter doesn't mind me telling this story because this is kind of funny.
He doesn't listen to me.
I'm gonna email him the link just so he knows. So we're at our first show in Glens Falls, New York, right? Now the anticipation for this show from Q Prime, especially Peter, because this was his baby, right? I mean, it was just off the chain. We've been advancing this thing for a year and a half. All the builds, everything. Everybody's so excited about this. And got the stage set up in the center, PA up. Peter's sitting with me at the front of House Riser when the doors open. The doors open, and I kid you not, the first kid that came through the thing comes running down to the aisle, right down to the railing, right where we're sitting, and he's looking, and he's kind of looking around. He's going, well, wait a minute. Who put the stage in the center? This is going to suck. I was just crawling under the rack, just thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen here, man? And just the look on Peter's face was just fantastic. But he took it like a champ, it was like, okay, we know what we got here. This is going to be cool. Just hang in there with us,
Where did you put the front of house console for that?
It was on the floor. But boy, it wasn't very far back in some of these places, man. I mean, there were times in some of these smaller venues we did where I was, 14 rows back from the PA system.
Wow.
We didn't put it up in the seats. I didn't want to put it up in the seats. I wanted it to be down on the floor. In hindsight, I might have changed that, but it seemed to work fine for what we were doing.
Nice. So is that was Def Leppard your introduction to Rush?
Those two things dovetailed. And again, Peter mentions kind of the common thread there. And also Howard Ungerleider, funny enough, because Howard did a lot of some of the lighting design in the round thing for Def Leppard. He did all the movers.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that. Well, Howard and I podcasted. He told me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I got to meet him, and for me, while I was a big Alice fan, Rush for me was the dream gig. That was the dream gig. I was the Rush fan that got to mix the show. I was that guy.
Wow.
So, similar sort of situation, we were doing a show up in Toronto, and Rush was looking for a new front of house engineer, and Getty came down to the show and sat right behind me for the entire show. And then we hit it off from there. So
nice. And what was your first record cycle with Rush? What were they doing at the time?
They had just finished Hold Your Fire, and we were just moving on to Presto.
Presto. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that was a great time. I just absolutely loved that gig. I was so heartbroken to have to leave that gig.
Oh, to leave Rush?
Yeah.
And that was due to Petty, or why did you?
Yeah. Well, it was one of those things. I was with Rush all the way through, the tragedies with Neil. And honestly, at that point, this is the late 90s. It really did not look like Rush was going to survive it. It just didn't. you kind of sympathize with it. I mean, Neil's the lyricist in the band. He's lost his daughter, his only daughter, or his only child, and his wife in a span of, 6 months. It's like, he always said, what am I going to write about? Of course, you know what I'm going to write about. I can't do it, So, like I said, there was all the underpinnings of them not going forward at all.
That was it. But, of course, we know the tragedy there and how they pulled out of it. But going back to being the sound guy, I mean, that was a interesting part of their career because they started as a heavy metal band, guitar, bass, drums, and then they started integrating technology. Keyboards started coming in, bass pedals. Geddy's vocals went from a shrilling scream to a relaxed kind of vibe. So you can tell that the
way more pop sensibility in the
the influences of the 80s. Yeah, kind of brought them into the 90s. So they turned into, they were certainly a pop band, but, they were influenced by, Regata de Blanc by the Police.
Yeah.
They were.
Well, their edge got softened a little bit. No doubt about it.
They, the 80s, electronic pop, influenced them very heavily. So I think that was a really interesting era. I think it kind of started just after moving pictures and going into signals and
Grace Under Pressure really was kind of their. That's always the one I mark where they started really feeling the influence of the 80s. But all of that said, Chris, I mean, I've always felt this way because I've been a Rush fan since day one.
Yeah, me too.
They are such a unique beast because it is really hard to pick out what their influences were. I mean, you just try to say, well, where did Rush come from? I know where Led Zeppelin came from. That came from, rhythm blues. Where did Rush come from?
Yeah.
I don't have a clue,
I think it's a little bit of everything, because I think they were influenced by progressive rock, bands like Yes.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, obviously, Yes, Chris Squire had his influence on Geddy, no doubt about it. Classical music had its influence on Alex, if you listen to his playing. And I'll just say, I'll go on record as saying this. I think Alex Lifeson is the most underrated guitar player in the history of rock music.
I agree. He's very talented.
Oh my gosh. I mean, you think about the breadth of parts, sounds, composition that he put against that band. It's just breathtaking. Yeah, absolutely breathtaking.
Agreed. I've seen them so many times. And, they just, whether it's the songwriting or the technology or the instrumentation, the playing, all of it, it's a complete package. It really is.
They were a singularity. I've said it before. We're not going to see that again. You can see spices of it in other bands, but I'll put Neil there as well and just say, without doubt, one of the greatest drum composers of that genre, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I used to have this argument all the time with, drummers and stuff. Well, I can play all of his stuff. The question isn't whether you can play his stuff. The question is, given a blank piece of paper, would you write that part there?
Yeah.
That's the question. And the answer is no, you would not.
Well, that's why his drum solos are about as dull as watching paint dry. His solos were composed.
They were.
They were composed. So. They were pieces of music. They weren't just double kick and how fast you can do it and rolling the drums and hitting the cymbals and then banging the gong at the end. He had composed drum solos that actually had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Yeah.
It was nice to be a part of that process too. I got to tell you, because we got pretty trusting of each other over the course of years there, and we were doing surround sound at that point. Before people were doing surround sound. Yeah. We had speakers hung, 360 degrees in venues, and we allowed that to become part of the drum solo, where he would play off of those surround speakers.
Oh, interesting.
It was so cool. It was just so much fun. That was the alternate speaker source. We called it the ass. That's right. Yes.
Okay, so we've just talked about how great the musical side of Rush is, but also very cool people.
Oh my gosh!
Who drink good wine and love baseball? Come on.
What more do you want? Good grief.
What more do you want?
And I will say this about those three hooligans, man, because they can come off kind of although that personality is relaxed over time too, or that perspective on them is relaxed over time too. They used to come off a little stodgy, a little cerebral at times. They are three of the collectively the funniest human beings I have ever been around, bar none.
Yeah.
Bar none.
And you
Oh,
can tell that that they're best friends. You can just tell they're not just people who have to work together. They actually enjoy each other. So
they're so totally connected on all levels, not just musical.
All right,
this
kind
of grown up together.
Part of the conversation has to lead us. I talked about baseball.
Yes.
And I think you might know where I'm going with this conversation. We talked about Q Prime. We talked about Rush. We talked about Def Leppard. You have to tell the story of you were watching a baseball game with Getty, and were you supposed to be mixing Def Leppard that day? Or?
I was supposed to be at the load in. That's for sure.
Tell the story. It's too good to leave.
All right. Well, let's set it up and say, has anybody in the audience seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off? If you've seen that movie, then this will have a whole new life to the story. So I'm in town. We're going to play Maple Leaf Garden with Def Leppard. I've already worked for Rush for a bit of time, and Ged contacts me and goes, "Hey, I know you're in town. Blue Jays are in town, playing right down the street. Let's go to the game. You got time in the afternoon? It's 1:00 start, whatever." I was like, "Yeah, okay, sure, why not? What have I got to do around here?" So we go to the game. Now, I've kind of snuck out. It's one of those things where you kind of get on the radio and go, "Hey, I'm going to be off campus for just a little bit. If you need me, try my cell phone or whatever." One of those kind of days, right? Like I'm going out to lunch with somebody, right? So we go to the game. Now, Ged's got, primo seats. Like 4 seats up, first base side. Fantastic. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but Ged has been to every Blue Jays baseball game. I can't even think about how many games he's probably been to. Has never caught a foul ball. Never caught a foul ball. Third inning. I remember it like it was yesterday. Ed Sprague is up to bat, third baseman for Toronto Blue Jays. Hits a little flare foul ball. I reach up, grab it. I have it. Now, normally not a big deal, right? I'm now on the Jumbotron, which is also on the broadcast.
Right? Only a baseball.
Just like Ferris Bueller, giving it one of these, Unbeknownst to me, Peter Mensch is watching the game. Kind of does the math. Hey, am I not paying you to be at Maple Leaf Garden today? So, of course, there was phone calls waiting for me when we got back. Now, thank goodness Getty and Peter are very close friends because, Ged was willing to run some interference for me there. But just to get busted like that was like, oh.
Were they playing the Yankees? Because I know.
Well, he's a Mets fan. So, but I, for whatever reason, he just happened to be watching the game.
Oh, funny. I love that story. I've heard it a few times, and it's just as good every time.
And, the backstory to that, too, is this. All right. Now, Ged has an unbelievable collection of signed baseballs. Right. So we're at the game, and he goes, "Hey, give me your ball. I'll go get it signed by Ed Sprague, and I'll get it back to you." Okay, great. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thanks a lot. I have yet to see that baseball. I will never see that baseball. Somewhere in Geddy Lee's house is a signed baseball by Ed Sprague.
And with a little Post-it note that says, "Fuck you, Scovill. I'm still not caught a foul ball."
I may not have caught it, but I got it.
The closest I ever came to catching a foul ball, I was in Kauffman Stadium in Kansas City. I went to go see the Red Sox play, and I'm way out in right field, and I'm in foul territory, and the ball gets hit right towards me, and hits the concrete step about 20 feet below me, bounces up, lands right in my lap, bounces off my lap, back down the stairs. Somebody else grabs it.
So you were not Bartman.
I've not. So you were with Rush for quite a few cycles then.
Yeah, I did them all the way up until they shut down for a while, which was, I want to say, maybe end of '97, somewhere around there.
All right, and then Brad Maddox started mixing after that, right?
Yeah, well, when I couldn't come back, once they started to gear back up and there was some talk of them doing another record and going back out, I mean, they contacted me, thank goodness. And, I had already done a full system design. We were talking about going out and doing actually real surround, like 5.1 surround in an arena, and kind of had all that designed up. And then this is going to sound terrible. I don't want to say it this way, but it's kind of the truth of it. Petty caught wind of, and I had already been working for Petty at this point because, Rush had shut down. I thought, yeah, let's move on. I had worked for him for 2 or 3 tours, and somehow he caught wind of it that I was going to go do that, and he just put the kibosh on that right away. He basically bought me out for the tour.
Yeah.
And, I had to kind of bring it back to metaphor status to explain this to Rush, because we didn't end on really great terms there for a little bit. There was some raw emotions about it. But I kind of had to say to Ged, I said, Ged, this is like, okay, I'm playing for the Yankees, but the Red Sox have offered me a lifetime contract here. I've got to go take care of my family here. This is business right now, So I gave them every opportunity to kind of match it up and keep me in the camp, because I wanted to stay with Rush. I really did. I really wanted to do it, but it just didn't pan out. Now, do I regret that decision? I do not. I absolutely made the right decision for my life, my family, my career, etc. Right. But it was heartbreaking at the same time.
You and I were friends at that point in time. I do remember you going through that, and I do specifically remember you referring to part of your house as the Petty Wing.
The Petty Wing. That's right. The Petty Library over here. Yeah.
Okay, so working for Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. I mean, Go-Go's, Def Leppard, Rush. This is a completely different thing. This is a complete, this is a completely different thing. This is more organic. This is more analog, maybe not on your end, but this is Mike Campbell, for Christ's sakes. This is Benmont Tench. This is incredible masters of what they do. If you're looking at, more so of the Great American Songbook kind of vibe as opposed to high-tech Rush,
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, the contrast between those two worlds is positively striking, the interesting thing was, it's funny how these little threads just weave through all of this, Petty's management had reached out to me a couple of times while I was mixing Rush to come to work for them. And scheduling wise, it just didn't work out. There was just no way I could do it. And in the late 80s, a guy named Mike Shipley, I don't know if you know that name. He's I think probably maybe one of the greatest record mixers we've known in the music business for many years. And he mixed the Def Leppard stuff, and as well as a bunch of other stuff. I'm not doing his career any justice here, but just a sensational guy. And he had mixed Let Me Up, I've Had Enough for Petty. He had mixed that record for him. And it just sounded fantastic. I just remember thinking, wow, boy, Petty kind of stepped up their game here a little bit. And I just happened to be talking with Mike, I think it was during the Adrenalize tour or whatever, and he goes, oh, dude, if you ever get the chance to mix Petty, he says, you have to take it. You have to take it. He says, it will be the coolest gig you ever take, bar none. He says, do not pass it up. So, I kind of had that in my back pocket for a long time, And then once again, their management reached out to me and asked if I was available. This was right before Wildflowers was getting ready to do its thing.
Oh, wow.
And I just happened to work out, and I said, yeah, let's make it happen. Now I'm going to be, this is going to just sound so sacrilegious to say this now. I was a really big fan of Tom's records, especially his earlier records, because I thought they sounded great. The whole Shelley Yakis and Jimmy Iovine productions, they sounded fantastic.
Yeah. It was no Donkin though.
This was no, Mike Campbell's no George Lynch, let me tell you. But that sounds terrible. I was there. But I even have trouble letting the words out of my mouth right now. I wasn't the hugest Tom Petty fan. I just wasn't. It was like I was into other things. I just wasn't the biggest Tom Petty fan. But I was going to take the gig. I was like, okay, I'll take the gig. This is no exaggeration, within 72 hours of taking the gig and being in rehearsals for 72 hours, I knew I was going to be there for the rest of my life. I knew I was going to, I thought I'll finish my career in this gig. It was just the most amazing amalgam of creativity and personality in a room I've ever seen.
Right.
Ever.
And you know what? I know exactly that sensation you're describing. It's intangible. You really can't describe it. I've had that a few times in my career, and I think all of us who have experienced that are kind of chasing that
Totally.
throughout our career.
Because it makes all the difference in the world. I mean, I can honestly say it. There was never a day of work in that camp. Just was never a day of work.
Right. And how many years did that working for Petty? How long did that go for you?
Close to 25.
Wow. And obviously, you took it to the finish line.
Yeah, unfortunately, because I'm here to tell you, he wasn't done by a long stretch. It was just such an unfortunate, horrible tragedy.
Yeah.
But and people want to bag on him about it at times, because of the hip and all that stuff, and being on the painkillers. But you have to understand Tom's personality to understand this, right? Because the hip issue arose after the tour had been planned. We were probably just coming into production rehearsals. We had already been in band rehearsals a little bit. And the idea of this hip is bad and he's going to have to get this taken care of. He really should stop and get the replacement surgery. And then we go on. We should postpone the tour. And I heard him say this. We can't postpone the tour. There are people counting on me for a living. I'll make it.
Wow.
Right? He comes as advertised. He was, the real deal. And I saw him. We had this little routine where I would come out and spend about 20 minutes with him before every show on the bus, chatting. How you doing? How's your voice? All of those kind of check-ins. And I kid you not, Chris, there were days where I saw him where he could not walk from the back lounge to the front lounge in the bus. And then 30 minutes later, I see him on stage and he's Tom Petty rock star for the next 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
It was just an amazing thing.
Yeah, I saw the documentary. I don't know where it was on, Netflix or Amazon or whatever. The Petty documentary was unbelievable.
The Peter Bogdanovich one
might have been. It's I'm not sure.
Kind of a 4-hour.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't long. I started in Florida and went through Mudcrutch and all that. And
oh man, even mixing the Mudcrutch thing was just such a dream. It was just amazing. Because you get to see, 4 or 5 guys that have been together since they were kids. Absolutely kids. And the amazing part of that tour, I think you got to be really tuned into Petty to really get this. But on Mudcrutch, he's the bass player.
Right.
And he's so funny about it. But, he sings differently when he's playing bass as opposed to playing guitar. And he was always going about, well, when you're playing bass, you don't ever stop. He goes, there's no breaks. I got to play the whole thing. It's like, yeah, you got to play the whole song.
Oh, how funny.
Can't just throw some shapes and, rah the audience.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but, just following his career, whether you're a fan of his music, but just the other things he did, playing with Johnny Cash when the Heartbreakers were Johnny Cash's band, and when when he was with the Traveling Wilburys, which was that's
what I'm saying. He walks in really, really rarefied air. He should be in the Hall of Fame 3 or 4 times, honestly.
Right.
Just try and reconcile in your head the catalog of songs that he and that band have played on. It is mind-numbing.
Right.
Absolutely mind-numbing.
It is. That's why that documentary was just kind of, wow, and this one, and then that one,
Well, really, and even with the documentary, Chris, he went on another 10, 12 years after the documentary.
Right.
And was ready to go more. There was tentative plans to go out and do, because they were going to do, Wildflowers was originally a double album and Warner Brothers only released it as a single. So there was all this stuff that they've just now released, the rest of the songs. And it's called All the Rest. But there was plans to go out and do a Wildflowers tour where, we were going to only play that double record. And,
oh, wow. That would have been amazing.
We had been talking, I talked to him about it on the phone a couple of days before he passed away. So the plans were in place,
Man, you must have been heartbroken.
Oh, I'm still not over it. It's still really, really raw for me. My saving grace is to go listen to Tom Petty radio and listen to the Buried Treasure Show. It's just like sitting around the rehearsal room with them,
I love the story of how the Traveling Wilburys came together. It was basically a George Harrison solo record being produced by Jeff Lynne, and I think one day I think they were looking for a guitar. It's like, oh, Petty's got one of those guitars. He lives right down the street. Let's get Petty. And before you know it, hey, Bob Dylan is in town. Why don't you have him come over? And it just turned into a band.
But the way I heard about it with Dylan was the funny part. I don't know this for a fact. This is just the scuttlebutt, but somehow he caught wind of them being in the studio together and got angry. I was like, well, I want to be in the band. Why didn't they call me? I want to play.
Right.
So now, okay, we got Dylan. Who else? Roy Orbison? Okay, yeah, sure. Bring him in. Let's have some of him too. Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
Well, do you know how they came up with the name for that band?
I don't actually.
Well, this is what I read this in an article, and there was this, gag line. It was this joke that they kept saying over and over again in the studio.
Sounds totally right.
And it was, they say, "Don't worry, we'll bury it in the mix."
Wilburys. That's awesome. I love the whole thing that's happened culturally of kind of gauging somebody whether they are a Wilbury or not, right? Wilbury or not a Wilbury, Yeah, no, he's not a Wilbury. Yeah, he's a Wilbury. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Oh, funny. Well, let's talk about a little bit about how we got to know each other. I was working for the mighty Matchbox 20. The mighty Matchbox 20. Who, I really think they were a great band at that time. They were, they had the songs, and they were wonderful human beings, and it was a really, really wonderful time to be on the road. Family atmosphere. Everybody loved each other. There was a lot of respect, and you know what? We our sound guy. We were playing in Europe, I remember, and the sound guy just left. I forgot his name. It was like his other gig was with Ted Nugent. One day he was there, and the next day he was just gone. He was disappeared. So I remember Jay Summers was the monitor engineer. We put the front of house console next to the monitor console on the side of the stage.
Okay, dude, take it.
And Jay mixed both of them. It was our last show. We were somewhere in Spain, but then we came. That's when we brought you in.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to you on the phone. It's like, oh, Robert Scovill, everybody's telling me about, he does this and that and the other. And then we got to know each other.
It was a really interesting time there because, I mean, I don't know who drove the path to get to me, but I know ML, God rest his soul, ML Procise was involved in that process. And somehow,
yeah, he was.
And then Matt and Dean Serletic, because they both reached out to me. I had conference calls with Matt and Dean in the early days of that, just discussing kind of the vision for it and what they were going to try to do.
Well, so. we all know that they were huge Petty fans. We're getting Petty's guy.
Well, I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know that.
I kind of thought that Matchbox 20 could be another Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Because they had the great songs. They played well. It's just, I don't know.
The rise was a little too meteoric to be that. I mean, they went from nothing to being huge. I mean, seemingly overnight. They
did, yeah.
Too much of an exaggeration. Where Petty, I mean, they had a long grind. And there are things that happen to you as a band and as people when you all survive that long grind together. So I actually think Matchbox is kind of experiencing some of that now. Because there's been so many years past since that. I still, I kind of follow Paul, the drummer, on Instagram, and I can just read it into his posts. Sometimes it's a very reflective and a very respective time of or a voice about that time. They understand what they went through and what it actually means to them now.
Yeah. Well, Paul got a hold of me probably the summer of 2019, saying, "Hey, it's been a long time. We're going to go out next year. We'd really like to bring you back in." I mean, it's been, those times were so wonderful when we're all together. Yeah. And things kind of got away from us. And we want to try to create some of that vibe that we had from back in we did 98 together, and then we did 2001 together, I believe.
Yeah, I want to say I did three, I think maybe 4 tours.
Okay, so you stayed longer than I did. I only did the first 2 tours, the first record and the second record.
Yeah, no, I was all the way out to the 4th record.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So you were there a while. Oh, well, there you have it.
Yeah, well, at one point I had, and this, these are the luxuries you get when you get in a really good spot. I was doing Matchbox 20 in the late 90s, I guess, probably mid to late 90s. And of course, Petty wanted to tour. And I mean, this sounds like I'm patting myself on the back, but it's just the fact of the matter. He had told his manager, if he don't go, I ain't going. So, I was in the seat. So I became the manager's biggest enemy because Tom insisted that he booked the tour around my Matchbox 20 shows.
I remember you were at war with Tony Dimitriadis. I remember that. Yeah.
I love him to death, though, man. Me and Tony we get on famously now, but there was some tough times back then because he was having a lot of pressure put on him by Tom to make sure that I stayed there. And I remember I had one front of house system. And I would do Matchbox 20 shows, and then we would pack it up, and I would go do Tom Petty shows on the breaks, and then come back to the tour and do more.
I remember that. We had to move it around. You were the first one I remember ever touring with that had, I don't know if it was Pro Tools, but you recorded the shows. It was my first experience of, you were the, I was with guys who were just flipping the switch and mixing, and spinning knobs and sliding fader. You were the first guy I noticed that was really into tech.
Well, you probably, I don't think you were privy to this when this was going on, even though you saw that aspect of it. But like in 94, 95, well, right when I started with Petty, I started developing the virtual sound check workflow that started in that camp. And I was refining that in analog over a period of about 10 years before I took it to Avid and we put it in an actual product. So, I'm kind of the grandfather of virtual sound check. I was the only guy doing not only recording but playback as well on site. I didn't do very much of that during the Matchbox run, but I did during Rush and Petty, where I was virtual sound checking with tape as opposed to hard drives, So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I definitely took notice.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of changed the industry. And I always knew it would. Once I kind of got my head wrapped around it, I thought, okay, if this gets handled right here, this is going to change the way people work. Absolutely going to change the way people work. And the quality of the shows, it's going to change the quality of the shows.
I do want to get into, because I know you were, had an experience with Digico and then now Avid. But let's talk a little bit, before we hit on that. You've spent your time with, did you do a Prince tour, if I remember?
I did, yeah, I did. I came in and I'll just politely call it, I came in and bailed water off the ship for about a month on Jam of the Year. So that was, I want to say that was late 90s, something like that.
Okay. Now, you speak to people, I've spoken to Roy Bennett, I've spoken to Malcolm Weldon, and they're, Prince just, stories come out of there. I don't know if you were there.
Gosh, I mean, it's the Encyclopedia Britannica of stories. I mean, that's a tomb of stories that are going to make their way out someday. I mean, it's just one of those, just amazing. And when I say amazing, I mean, great, bad, awful, wonderful, all of it. Just put into a big pile. It's all of those things. It's one of it again is a singularity. I've never been on a tour like that since. I was never on a tour like that before that. It was just an amazing.
Yeah, he's one of the guys I just like too much to work for. I don't want to not listen to your music anymore. I don't want it to be sullied by.
Well, I'm sure you've had that happen where it's like, be careful who you work for. You don't want to, if you work for your heroes, you might see another side of them where they may not be your heroes anymore, So
right. I think you also told me Toto. Did you mix Toto?
I did. I mixed Toto in that would have been 94, because that was the year my daughter was born. So yeah. 94.
Okay, so in 94, they were still an active hardworking band in '94.
They were still very much something in Europe and England and Asia, but not so much in the United States. They were really
Was Jeff Beccaro still alive at that point, or was he
no,
already?
no,
he was.
No,
already,
that, I got really excited to do that tour because that was right at the Tamboo record, and Simon Phillips was playing drums with him at that point. And I just remember thinking, I cannot wait to go work with Simon Phillips. It's going to be so awesome. Only to have him back out of the tour about 2 days before we started. I think that was like a colitis thing, and Greg Bissonette had to fill in for him. So
I saw Simon Phillips play once when he was with Jeff Beck. I saw the There and Back tour.
Oh, dude,
it was Tony Hymas and Mo Foster, and
that would have been just
Jeff Beck and Simon Phillips. Beck, that song "Star Cycle" off of There and Back, where it's like that double kick, sounds like a motorcycle. Yeah, it's where Van Halen probably stole.
I wore that record out. Absolutely wore that record out.
Great record.
Here's another little known one. If you want to go back in trivia that people don't know sometimes, but go back and listen to this record now, with the knowledge that it's Simon Phillips. It'll change your entire perception of the record. Go listen to Judas Priest, "Sin After Sin." That's Simon.
Phillips.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he
was probably
fantastic
17 years old at the time.
I don't know how old he was.
He's probably a kid.
Yeah, but it is off the chain great.
Wow. I do want to talk about records because, I did a little sniffing around, and I know you do a little thing about records. So let's talk about Jackson Browne a little bit.
Sure.
I met Jackson Browne. He's friends with one of the guys in Roger Waters' band, and he came, and he was just so easy to talk to, and just a lovely guy. Loves tequila, just
who doesn't?
And had a really wonderful conversation with him. Tell me about working for Jackson.
Probably one of the most rewarding experiences of my entire career.
Really?
Yeah.
And you've been rewarded plenty.
I have. I've been so lucky. Good grief. But, it's the combination of him, the music, that voice, the players, just everything. And Jackson came up to me the first time we ever met. Actually, it wasn't the first time we were in the same room together, but the first time we ever met. Petty had played, oh my gosh, I'm spacing the name of it. The outdoor place down in, oh my gosh, this place has been around forever. It's in Southern Cal, down in Orange County. What's the outdoor place there?
Irvine Meadows?
Irvine Meadows. My gosh, I couldn't think of the name of it. Anyway, Petty was playing Irvine Meadows. And I didn't know it, but Jackson was sitting literally 2 seats in front of me listening to the show. And after the show was over, he came up and he goes, hey, my name's Jackson. And he goes, I got to ask you a question. He goes, how do you do that? He goes, that's the greatest sounding thing I've ever sat in front of in my entire career. He goes, it was unbelievable. And we hit it off from that moment forward. He treated me like he had known me for 40 years. We sat and talked for ages. And then I had the opportunity to go mix a bunch of stuff for him. And it was just absolutely, every mixing engineer should have the opportunity to push up a fader and have Jackson Browne's voice come out of the other end of it. It's just magical. Right.
Well, sound guys are, when it comes off the stage pretty good, it makes your job a lot easier.
Man, does it ever? So my third son is named after him. He's Jackson's namesake.
Oh,
so.
Really?
Yeah. And we've been, I don't want to say we've been close friends. I can't characterize it as that, but every time we see each other, it's very familiar and very respectful, very cool. It's just one of those things I'll take to the grave with me. Because the flip side of that story is with the company I was working for in Kansas City, we did some of those early Jackson Browne shows in 1979, 1980, around there. And I remember just even at that point, when you did a Jackson Browne show, it was like, wow, that is different than anything I've ever done. That was so good, so professional, so everything. It just made you want to be around that,
Well, wasn't that era? Awesome. Wasn't that the Lawyers in Love era? Where it was just after that. Yeah, he kind of went off topic, I think, in my opinion, for a little while. But
he got sucked into the '80s just like everybody did.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's still a pretty good record. You can look back and listen to that record. Those records hold up, man. I mean, they got the 80s kind of splashy production on them, but it's still Jackson Browne. Good grief.
Right. So you've had, like we were just talking about, you've had some pretty good product to mix. Any turd polishing that you've had to do over the years?
We're going to make me go there. Huh?
Oh, you don't have to. You don't have to. Oh, how funny. So okay. So technology over and over again is so important to you. You've embraced it, and you're an innovator. You've promoted it. You teach it. You sponsor it. You're with Avid now. And I had a chance to work with your partner Rob Allen on Massive Attack.
Yeah.
Who I would say, hey, next time you talk to Scovill, just say hi to him for me. Tell him I miss him. All this stuff. I don't know if he ever passed on.
Yes, he did. He absolutely did.
Good. But he gave me a little insight on the things you do as an ambassador for Avid. Tell me a little bit about that. What do you do for Avid?
Well,
what's your title?
It started, I'll tell you the whole story. There's only one way to tell this story. So in 1986, 85, 86, I was mixing monitors for Laurie Anderson. Laurie Anderson, Home of the Brave, all that.
Oh, yeah. She's an innovator in what she does.
It was absolutely great.
Avant-garde, yeah.
Yeah, very much so. And obviously technology was just flowing through that show. I mean, we were doing things nobody had even remotely dreamt of doing.
Right.
And a guy named David LeBolt was playing keyboards with her. And David and I hit it off pretty well. I mean, we got along really well. We were hanging out on days off together, blah, blah, blah. So we go through that tour. Tour ends. And as we always kind of see, things happen. We went our separate ways, right? Hey, David, nice working with you. See you around. 15 years later, I get a call. Hey, it's Dave LeBolt. I've been working with DigiDesign for the past 10 years, helping them develop Pro Tools. And he drove all of the big Pro Tools development through the 90s. He was kind of the visionary for all of that. And he goes, we're thinking about putting together a live sound console. Will you come up and work on it with us? I was like, yeah, absolutely. So this was 1999, 2000. And I did this really quietly. I mean, because digital consoles weren't really I was just like, it's not quite there yet. So I kind of tiptoed in there, but I had access to some really great people there, and they were listening to things that I had to say and suggesting, and sure enough, I made it all the way to 2005 in that role at DigiDesign as a consultant on this thing called the Venue project. So that was the Venue console when it first came out. So I've had my hands in there a long, long time. I mean, in terms of that, I'm coming up on 20 years of dealing with them now. So when 2005 came around, and the product released, they just said to me, you just need to go to work for us. Come on, and I was kind of looking to slow down a little bit touring wise at that point, because my kids were, coming into play. I had two kids by that time and was getting ready to have a third. So I wanted to be home and be dad a little more. So I thought, yeah, okay, I'll try this for a while and see how it goes being corporate guy. But they put me in such a cool position there where I kind of had influence on the design of the product, the marketing of the product. I had a touch on sales. I had influence on all of that, kind of going forward. So long story short, I've been there for a long time in that role. And the thing that I brought to the table there, as much as anything, aside from just console expertise and understanding that, was the concept of virtual sound check. That did not even exist in anyone's mind previous to me coming there and saying, because I saw it in the late 80s when I started recording with Pro Tools. You saw some of this with Matchbox 20, where I started thinking, okay, now that we're away from tape machines, this is the way virtual sound check is going to work. I can absolutely see it on the horizon. Just got to go make it happen now, So I was influential in designing, building that into that design.
Okay, and then, that's DigiDesign.
They were owned by Avid at the same time. It was just two different companies. Yeah, it was Avid and DigiDesign. Avid was the video portion. DigiDesign was audio, and then sometime the brands converged around 2009, maybe 2010, where it just became Avid, and they got rid of the DigiDesign name.
Gotcha. So are you into R&D still, or are you more?
Yeah, very much so. very much so.
Well, where else is there to go?
Believe it or not, there's lots of places to go here. And, again, this is where we're going to circle back around to some early conversation, because there's a lot of energy in manufacturing right now talking about remote mixing workflows, where I could be sitting right here and mixing with my Surface, mixing on an engine that is remotely located somewhere and mixing for the stream.
Oh, okay.
Right. I mean, this is already happening in broadcast, and we're going to see it happen in concert sound as well. So, kind of the perfect version of that story is, okay, Chris, you go hire a company to do production, or hire your production elements for a tour, lighting company, video company, sound company. Guess what else you're going to hire? You're going to hire a studio that's going to be online every night from 6 o'clock to midnight, mixing your streamed audio.
Because it'll be another source of revenue.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It will. Wow. I mean, I that's the way I see it happen. Well, it's going to happen. I have no doubt that that's going to happen. And I think it's going to fuel, it's just me, this is me shooting from the hip a little bit. I think it's going to fuel some other big movements in the television world and the streaming world. Like, I'm still a little curious why we haven't seen something like the Warner Brothers channel that is nothing but Warner Brothers artists and Warner Brothers live performances of their artists, etc., available in like a Hulu stream or something like that. Like a Paramount network. Well, why not have a Atlantic Records network? Why isn't that happening?
I've heard managers talk about that, and I think agents are fearful that would hinder the ticket sales.
See, I think just the opposite is going to happen. I really do. I really believe this. I think the streaming this year has shown us now that it's not a replacement for live performance. And matter of fact, I think after we start to get back, there's going to be a premium and a value put back on being in the building with the artist. It's going to refocus everybody on that and go, oh man, that's so much better than watching a stream. Right. But that said, streaming will be a part of every one of these things so that they got all these other avenues for it. Because they can't really, monetize streaming yet, but because it feels wrong to do it. It's like, well, we're shut down. Why are you trying to take money from me just to watch your damn stream? Yeah. But when it's in conjunction with live performances somewhere, now you're going to get away with it there. Start getting some advertising dollars in there. Ooh,
yeah,
boy.
Some sponsors. Well, just speaking about North America, the States and Canada, there's a lot of people who can't go to big cities to see shows.
That's right.
I remember when I was a kid, Led Zeppelin did not come to Connecticut. You had to go to New York City to see them, and there are people that can't make it or can't afford it or can't go into the big city because maybe it means a hotel and transportation and all these, but they can scratch the money together with their friends to pay for a pay-per-view.
What it's like even being production manager on a big tour. You got to go to the cities that can financially support the tour.
Right.
If they don't have a venue there that can support the size of the show you're doing, you're not going to go,
What about as far as, plugins and whatnot? Are you active in coming up with all that? In 2021, you can make a show sound analog but digital. There's all sorts.
You can. I'm on record as saying that I can take a digital console today and I can make it sound more analog than an analog.
Yeah. Because
I can emulate it to such a degree that you couldn't actually do some of that in analog. Mm-hmm. And analog is a one-trick pony. You're either analog or you're not analog, So,
right.
So it's still in its, I think it's still in its early days. All of the console manufacturers, I don't care who it is, are only on their second generation of digital consoles now. Maybe with the exception of Yamaha, if you want to go all the way back into their little mixers. But in terms of large frame digital consoles, everybody's just on their second generation now. It's still really, really new, really fresh. We're still figuring stuff out all the time, especially if you start adding it up with networked audio now. Now you're talking about being able to do some really, really amazing things.
Oh, God, remember the days of, your system engineer had to chart the console every night. You had to write down where all the knobs were.
I still have all of those charts.
So you start the next day by making sure all the knobs are in the same spot and the faders. It's just, it just seems so, archaic.
Yeah. By comparison. And, you always, this whole argument of analog versus digital, sound quality, all those kind of things, you have to put that in the right context, right? You have to put it in the context of live performances, shows going up and down every day, huge amounts of inputs, outputs, et cetera, I mean, I'll give you a great example. So I did a show here in Aspen a couple of years ago now called Earth's Call. And it was a huge show. It was this kind of Save the Earth benefit, right? LA Philharmonic, band sitting in front of them, just an inordinate amount of singers and performers, et cetera. I remember at one point on the console, I had 192 inputs open to the PA system. And I remember having that kind of moment of just thinking, this would not be possible in analog right now.
You'd be surrounded by consoles, yeah.
I'd be surrounded by consoles and additional engineers. There would be 3 people. It would take 3 people to mix this right now.
And buzzes and...
Well, yeah, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah,
but, I just remember thinking, okay, this is where digital is making its way here, because we can do things now that we wouldn't have even attempted before,
What do you think of what Claire's doing these days?
In what context? In the
just
the
in the networking thing, and they've in a positive way, because we all know how the Claire's work. It's not a monopoly; it's more of a family bringing all the resources together.
Yeah.
The purchasing of Eighth Day Sound, the purchasing of Britannia Row, and going back to Showco and whatnot, and the tech they have now, and the education that they're doing in Lidditz and whatnot. I really think it's, we're not talking about AT&T owning everything or Warner owning everything. We're talking about a company that's doing it the right way and educating and bringing people together. And I just blown away. And you know what? And Sean Claire, they're in really good hands.
I agree.
For a long time into the future because of them.
I mean, it's really easy to the uninformed to look at Claire Brothers and characterize them as the Death Star, and they're just not. They're just very, very smart guys, very, very smart business people. And the thing I like about all of this growth and expansion that has happened for them is that they're trying to turn that all back into the industry with the Claire campus, the ability to rehearse up there, all of it is really geared toward making the industry better.
Yeah.
It's not about making Claire Brothers better. It's about changing the sound reinforcement industry.
Yeah, well, it kind of is in a way making Claire better, because I talked to Sean on a podcast and he was saying that even back when they bought Showco, they brought some Showco practices into Claire that they didn't have before.
That's what I'm talking about.
That made Claire better, that made everything better. Just like little things like inventorying and just little, they learn from all these other companies.
I mean, I was thrilled to see them take on the networking thing. They were way ahead of the game on this.
Yeah.
Being able to set up local, high-speed, private networks, that can have public access, blah, 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 all of it. They were way ahead of the curve on this. And I remember thinking, look, I honestly, I remember thinking at that point, okay, Claire Brothers finally gets it. It's a services business. It's not a technology business. They're offering services here.
Right.
And I think that's part of it's just my own take on it. I've talked to Sean many times, but this is just my personal instinct talking here. I think that's part of what's behind the Eighth Day acquisition, the Britannia Row acquisition, because if you look at the centerpieces of those companies' technologies, they're different, right? Eighth Day is a D&B house. Britannia Row is an L Acoustics house. So Claire Brothers is now starting to offer more focus on services, not S4s, right?
Yeah.
It's not just we make the S4, so let's use this company. Now they've got a lot of options now that are all Claire Brothers, right? That's smart business.
And they've got, all the great techs are out there. The service is, you're just taken care of in so many ways other than getting good kit.
Yeah. I love them because they think big.
Yeah. Well, we
They do
can't
not
talk,
think small.
we can't talk about Britannia Row without talking about our friend Brian Grant and the fun that we've had with Brian Grant.
I still have a headache.
I have to tell the story one night where you and I had a night off, and I think we had a couple nights off in London, because I remember you and I went.
Thank goodness.
We went to the Brixton Academy to see Tool that one
That's
night,
right.
and I just
That's
remember
right.
that was an absolutely incredible show. But I'm not talking about that. Brian Grant, who Britannia Row, took us out to dinner. We went to this ballin' Italian place. I mean, the food was just sensational, from bread, salad, pasta, meats, all of it, And then between the three of us, we must have had 5 bottles of wine. I mean, we were just doing it.
I wish I remembered the meal. I just
and then Brian goes, "Oh, mate, let's go over to my house. I've got this beautiful bottle of port." So we get in this car and we go to Brian's house, and we sit there in his kitchen and just talk shit for a couple hours and drink this bottle of port to completion,
which we had no business drinking.
We had no business doing to begin with. And I remember, because we had to work the next day, and I remember Brian, classy man, called us a car. We didn't have to look for a taxi or anything. A car service showed up, and I just remember we're in the front door saying goodbye to Brian. And you know how people by the front door, they have like a little table for their keys and their mail and all these other things. And you kind of lose your balance and lean on it, knock it over. Table goes over, mail goes everywhere.
You're being very kind to say I lost my balance. I think I was really on the verge of passing out.
Okay, so the next morning, lobby call. We've got a gig. I think we're going out to Glastonbury or something. I'm not sure what we're doing, but
that actually sounds right.
And and these aren't the days where everybody have these really clever rolling suitcases. I remember you had a big duffel bag with handles, and you're meant to carry it. And I'm on the bus, and I can see the door, and I'm waiting for you to come out. And you come out, you've got your bag in one hand, you're dragging your luggage. Your luggage is dragging, and it's like you're collecting leaves and going through puddles, and you're just like
I got to tell you, my bag was dragging me to the bus. I was not in charge of that bag. I'm telling you.
Oh, that was funny. Okay, so I do want to get to this. Like I said, I did a little research. I went onto your website, and I noticed you do a vinyl blog.
I went through a period where I was doing it. Yeah, I
know. I'm a huge vinyl guy. That's my days off on the road are spent in record shops hunting, and searching and just that's just my thing. I don't do anything other than look for records these days. And I went through and I read a bunch of your blogs. You did a thing on live records. You spent a period of time where you examined live records, and you do a little story about each live record, and not only your feelings about it, but maybe who mixed it and who was responsible for it and whatnot. And I read a bunch of them, and I found them really entertaining and informative. I mean,
oh, that's cool. I'm so glad. What drove it initially was I was going to be mixing some live records for a couple of clients. And I thought, I'm going to go back and study a little bit, and I mean, I guess coincidentally, I don't know how else you would describe it. I mean, the vast majority of my vinyl collection that you can see back here behind me and over here is live records. Like, I don't have that many studio vinyls anymore, but almost all of that is live records. So I've been collecting live recordings of every genre for ages. So, the idea of going back and studying some of those and kind of getting a feel for what those sounded like for the stuff I was going to be mixing was a lot of fun. So at that point, I would wake up every morning, wake my son up at 6 o'clock in the morning, get ready to go to school. And while he was getting ready, I would put one of these records on and write the blog. And by the time I got done with that, he was ready to go to school, and off we go, rinse, lather, repeat. 30 days of study. Here we go.
Wow, I think they're fantastic, and I think in the notes for the podcast, I'm gonna put a link so people who are interested in seeing that, because they're really good. I mean, the one you wrote about the Mahavishnu Orchestra, loved it. Seconds Out by Genesis, where you made a mention to Emil Procise. Is he mixing monitors for Genesis?
Right.
Yeah, he did. He did.
Well, it was so much fun to go back and look at those liner notes. I mean, it's just. I mean, and that's something that we don't have today. That it's really, really unfortunate.
That whole tactile vibe of records. I mean, I live by myself, but I have this rolling stool and I'll just roll around in front of my records and I'll listen to one, but I look at the others and I open them up and I read the liner notes, and it's just, not only does it bring back memories, but it's just, I don't know, maybe it goes just our love of music.
No, there's something
we're doing,
There's something right about it. I'm not, capable of dissecting it and, psychoanalyzing it, whatever, but there's something right about that. It's very analogous to opening a book and reading it, as opposed to reading a book on your phone or having, a book read to you. It's that experience is not the same. I don't care if you're born a week ago or you're born 50 years ago. There's something right about that tactile experience of doing that. And I, just something about that idea of putting the record on the turntable, the whole piece of it. There's something really right about that. And I'll tell you something else about that blog, which I'm kind of proud of, and it's kind of cool. Those records that are in that blog were not intentional. Meaning I kind of made a deal with myself, because I didn't want to kind of just gravitate toward the things I listen to all the time. I was like, I'm going to come down in the morning. I'm going to go like this, stop, pull it out. That's what we're listening to today.
Nice. I love it. It's just, live records were a thing when we were kids. Not so much anymore. I mean, no one puts out live records anymore because maybe they don't sell, or maybe there's too many bootlegs out there. But, live records were the thing. It was like a greatest hits record or something,
Yeah. And you kind of, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I kind of judged, whether a band had their bona fides by their live record, I mean, that usually told us whether we wanted to go see them live.
Yeah. True. And also I think probably my favorite one when I read was Allman Brothers Fillmore East.
Oh yeah, of course.
And because
that might have been one of the only intentional ones I picked, because I was like, I know I have to talk about this one.
Well, Bill Graham's autobiography, I've read it a few times. I just love the history of that man. And so I remember that era he talked about a lot of records were recorded at Fillmore East while it was open for those 3 years it was open or whatever. But in your notes in that blog, you were saying, you got to keep in mind, the Allman Brothers were like the third band. They were like in the middle of the bill. They weren't headlining. I'm like, they were like playing after Jefferson Airplane and before the Grateful Dead or something.
Yeah. And we're going to record a record.
And we're going to record a record with two drummers, two guitar players, keyboards, all these inputs and microphones to put up during a set change, and just throw and go and do one of the best live records ever made.
Yeah. That's why I just marvel at it. I just do.
Yeah. Well, they're the whether you want to call them Southern rock, I don't really consider them Southern rock. They're just a great rock and roll band. They've stood the test of time where I can listen to the Allman Brothers now, and I really can't listen to Leonard Skinner or it just doesn't do it for me. But the Allman Brothers, Dwayne Allman, the Barry Oakley, that whole thing before the tragedies, it was just freaking pure.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's my favorite thing to snowboard to. Like that's the music I have on when I'm snowboarding.
Right.
It's just magic.
Oh, fun. Well, this has been incredibly fun. I cannot tell you.
Long overdue, man. Long overdue.
The last time we saw each other, I had a day off in Phoenix. I think it was you, Butch Allen, and I.
Yeah, remember that place we went to eat?
Yeah. That place doesn't exist anymore, I know, but that chef was big ball, and his name was Chris something or other.
Yeah, that was full on.
You got some good food in your town.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Trotto. I just automatically go to Trotto these days, so much good food.
I mean, we got Pizzeria Bianco here.
Oh, well, that's Trotto's, one of Chris Bianco's restaurants. Yeah. It's just so good, Hey, and also,
it just sounds like you need to come to Phoenix. I can
what?
hear it in your voice.
I'm happy to come. I'm totally happy to come when I can. Oh, and you're doing Ironmans now, aren't you?
Yeah. I've been into the whole kind of fitness thing for about, 10 years now, 10, 12 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, I just did my first Ironman last October.
Nice. You finished?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
I know Matt's, you're talking Matt's wheelhouse now. Matt's Matt's into fitness and riding bikes and torturing his body just like that. Yeah.
Somehow I got hooked up. Don't ask me how. Somehow I got hooked up with some guys here in town who are, I mean, they're like full on endurance race guys, right? And one of them trains people to get ready for Navy SEALs, right? And it's intense. I mean, it's full on. So I was going to his gym for a little period of time. And, while I was there, I did the Alcatraz challenge. We did that swim and the run.
Really?
I've done the Great Wall Marathon. And
wow.
Did 2 World's Toughest Mudders, which were really, that's really something, man. 24-hour endurance race. That is everything you want and more.
Well, you look fit. You look great.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Not bad for 60.
You know what? Your lovely wife, Mary Jo, you're so lucky. You've got, one of the people in our industry who's got this incredible marriage, which is tough for road guys. But she was in touch with me, all trying to get me to get involved with the 59th. But I just couldn't do it. There was so much going on, and so many people knew about it. Well, your wife threw you a surprise 59th birthday because 60 was too obvious. So she wanted to throw you a 59th.
Yes. And let's just consider.
Was it a surprise?
Let's just consider. Oh my gosh, was it ever? I was in hook, line, and sinker. It was so embarrassing.
Really would have loved to have come to that. But,
let's just consider, Chris, how prescient she was here. Because if she would have waited till my 60th birthday, we couldn't have had the party.
Oh, wow. That's true.
Because of the lockdown.
That's true.
I was like, are you really that smart? I mean, how did you do that? Who makes that decision, right? We're going to have it during his 59th so we can celebrate it the whole year. Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that.
Okay. Last question. Do you still want to mix live shows?
Totally. I'm on the prowl for tours now that are going to go back out.
Yeah. All right. So you want to get on the bus with me?
Dude, I would get on the bus with you to mix the Mickey Mouse Club. Let's go. I mean, what are we waiting on?
Oh, that's so good to hear. Because so many people, when they get to be our age, they're like, yeah, I don't know, this might be it for me. And then then this pandemic is just going, nope, I'm not done.
I'm a lifer.
I'm ready to go. Well, fantastic.
She knows it too.
Well,
she's ready to get rid of me. She's going to be booking gigs for me before long. Get him out of the house, my God.
Well, Robert Scovill, multi-award winning sound engineer, whether it be Parnelli or the TECs, you're decorated to the ceiling, and a great guy and a great friend of mine who I miss you so much, and I promise not to let our friendship slip away. I know it's slipped away.
Let's not let it go another 10 years. Okay, what do you say? Or more? It's actually probably been even more than that, honestly.
Yeah, it's been great chatting with you, man. This has been so fun.
Likewise, Chris. Likewise. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I'm honored to be a part of it. Awesome.
Good. What do you got for him, Matt?
Nothing. That was great and very charismatic and awesome. Great audio and great stories, and I loved it. Thank you, Robert.
Yeah. I have to say, this has been, as far as guest audio, probably the best we've ever had.
Yeah, it puts us to shame. So I've got a lot of work to do now, trying to make it all sound okay. So
well, there's a lot of pressure in the online world now for audio guys.
Yeah.
I mean, if we've learned anything of a year of watching people on Zoom, on TV, et cetera, it's like how bad audio is. Like, oh my gosh, the audio on those things is horrible,
I know that microphone's like 50 years old, but I'll give me that model number. I got to figure that out. That's
good luck finding one.
and the boom, it's all great.
Yeah, it's good.
Well, again, man, I miss you, and thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you, Chris. I love you, brother.
Yeah, I love
Please
you too.
Take care of yourself.
Can't wait to see you soon, and I'm coming. Chris, we're going to, last time I was at Pizzeria Bianco, I swear to God, last time I was there was 4 of us. We ordered the entire menu. We ordered every pizza. We ordered every appetizer, everything.
Because that's what you do. That's exactly what you're supposed to do.
And I am not exaggerating. We just did. It was so fun. It was so fun. All right, man.
All right. Chris, Matt, thank you guys so much. Appreciate it
very much. Absolutely. Take care.
We'll see you guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.